If you're hearing this, it means the watcher has already seen you. I shouldn't even be recording this, but keeping quiet hasn't helped me so far. Silence doesn't make him go away. In fact, I think he prefers it. He waits for the moments when I'm most certain I'm alone, when I've convinced myself that I imagined everything. And then, he reminds me. The first time it happened, it didn't even feel like a warning. It felt like a prank. I woke up in the middle of the night to a notification on my phone, a new email. The subject line was blank. The sender address was gibberish, like someone smashed their keyboard, a 09D9s@unknown.net. I almost deleted it without opening, but curiosity, it always wins, doesn't it? The message inside was only 3 words. We see you. At first, I laughed. Really, it was stupid, cliché, straight out of one of those copy-paste horror stories I used to binge on Reddit. But what made me stop laughing was the timestamp. The email was sent exactly 1 minute before I woke up. I told myself it was coincidence, maybe spam, but there was something else, something I've never forgotten. Attached to the email was a single image, a paused frame from the Netflix show The Watcher, except it wasn't one I recognized. In the screenshot, a man stood in a darkened room, staring out a window. His face wasn't visible. The image quality was grainy, corrupted, but the angle, it was identical to the view from my bedroom window. And on the sill, half in shadow, I could make out the shape of my lamp. My lamp. I didn't show anyone. Not that night. Who would I even tell? Hey guys, guess what? Netflix is sending me cursed screenshots of my own room. I could already hear the laughter. So I deleted the message. Or at least, I tried. When I hit delete, the screen glitched. For half a second, the words reappeared in the body of the email, bigger this time, stretched across the whole display. We see you. Then my phone went black. I remember lying there, staring at my reflection in the screen, heartbeat so loud I was sure it would wake the neighbors. Every part of me wanted to throw the phone out the window, but I didn't. I just sat, frozen, telling myself it was a virus, a trick, anything but what it looked like. Here's the thing about warnings. You don't usually know they're warnings until it's too late. That email wasn't a prank. It wasn't spam. It was the first thread, tugged loose from a web I didn't even know I was trapped in. And before I go any further, before I tell you what happened next, you need to understand something. I'm not safe. And if you're still watching this, neither are you. I'll show you the full message later. I'll even tell you what it said after we see you. But not yet. Not until you know how it all started, how normal life was before the screen started watching me back. Because once you hear the whole story, you'll never look at Netflix or your own reflection the same way again. I guess I should start with what life looked like before all of this, before I started losing sleep, before I started questioning whether shadows move on their own. Back then, things were normal, or at least I thought they were. I worked a job that barely paid enough to cover rent, came home exhausted, and did what everyone else does to escape. Turn on Netflix. That glowing red N was like a portal to somewhere better, safer. Most nights, I'd throw on a hoodie, order some cheap takeout, and fall into the couch cushions with my roommate, Dylan. He was the type who lived off memes and conspiracy theories, the kind of guy who could recite every Mandela effect off the top of his head. He always had something to say, even when nobody asked. You know the real reason Netflix cancels shows after 2 seasons? He said once, shoving fries into his mouth. It's not about budget. It's because too many episodes give away the patterns. That's how they get you. I laughed like I always did. Dylan believed in everything, which meant I didn't have to believe in anything. His paranoia made me feel grounded, balanced. Our friend Lexi would sometimes join us. She was quieter, sharper, the type who noticed details the rest of us missed. I remember one night she pointed at the TV and said, "Isn't it weird how they always tell you because you watch this, you might like that?" Like, who's watching who exactly? We laughed again. That's what we did. Turned anything unsettling into a joke. Because if you laugh, it can't be serious, right? And that's the thing I keep circling back to. Everything about life felt safe because it was predictable. I went to work, I came home, I argued about what to binge next. We talked about shows like they mattered, like they were events. When The Watcher dropped, it was just another name in the endless list. Honestly, I didn't even like the show at first. The pacing was slow, the scares predictable. Dylan kept saying, "It's based on a true story," but that just made it feel cheaper to me. Like they were cashing in on real people's fear. Funny how that changed. Looking back, I see how carefully the normal life was staged. I see the contrast now. How comfortable I was, how naive, how unprepared. But in those moments, normal felt unshakable. The biggest problem I had was whether my Wi-Fi would buffer during a cliffhanger. That was before I noticed how quiet the apartment seemed when the TV was off. Before I realized how heavy the silence was without the laugh track, the jump scares, the constant noise filling in all the empty spaces. I wish I'd paid attention then, to the shadows that seemed too sharp in the corners of the room, to the way my reflection in the black screen sometimes seemed to blink a beat too late. But I didn't. Instead, I rolled my eyes at Dylan's theories, smiled at Lexi's observations, and sank deeper into the couch cushions. Life was simple, safe, or at least it pretended to be. And maybe that's why the first glitch hit me so hard. Because when you spend your nights numbed by routine, cheap food, endless shows, friends who never really take anything seriously, the moment something cracks through, it doesn't feel possible. It feels like you've been chosen. And in a way, I guess I had. But I'll get to that. For now, all you need to know is that life was ordinary. Comfortably, forgettably ordinary. Right up until the night the Watcher started watching back. The first glitch came so small, so stupid, that if I'd just turned off the TV and gone to bed, none of this would have mattered. But I didn't. I kept watching. It was a Tuesday night, nothing special. Dylan had passed out halfway through a bag of chips, and Lexi had gone home hours earlier. I was left alone on the couch, half watching The Watcher, half scrolling through my phone. That's when the subtitles changed. It happened mid-episode. A character was screaming at her husband, telling him to leave the house. I glanced at the screen just long enough to see the words, "Get out of the house." But when the camera cut back to her face, she was still screaming. The subtitles updated. "I see you." I froze. I thought I imagined it. Subtitles glitch all the time, right? But then it happened again. This time faster, like the words were fighting each other for space. "Get out of the house." "I see you." Stop fast-forwarding. That last one made my stomach drop, because I had been fast-forwarding earlier, skipping past the boring exposition like I always did. I blinked, rubbed my eyes, convinced I was overtired. When I looked again, the subtitles were back to normal, like nothing had ever happened. I told myself I was just seeing things. Stress, bad Wi-Fi, anything but what it looked like. I even muttered aloud, "Yeah, real scary." Glitched subtitles. Boo. Trying to laugh at myself. But then I heard the whisper. It wasn't from the TV speakers. It came from somewhere behind me. A voice, low and rasping, repeating the same line from the subtitles. "Stop fast-forwarding." I spun around so fast I nearly tripped over the coffee table. Nobody there. Just the dark kitchen, faint hum of the fridge, and Dylan snoring in his room. I told myself I was tired. I was hallucinating. That's what normal people do when weird things happen. They explain them away. And I wanted so badly to still be normal. The next night, it got worse. Lexi came over again, and we decided to re-watch one of the earlier episodes. About 20 minutes in, she leaned forward suddenly, squinting at the TV. "Wait, did you see that?" I hadn't. She rewound, paused the frame, and there it was. A face, just for a split second, reflected in the window behind the characters. Not an actor's face, not part of the show. Grainy, blurred, pale as paper. "That's creepy," Lexi said, forcing a laugh. "Probably some Easter egg." You know how they hide stuff. But I could tell by the way her voice cracked. She didn't believe it. We rewound again. The face was gone. No matter how many times we scrubbed back, the reflection never returned. That was the first time someone else saw it too, which meant I wasn't crazy. Or worse, I wasn't crazy alone. Still, Dylan refused to buy in. Bro, you guys are literally inventing ghosts out of pixels. Netflix is trash, sure, but they're not stalking you. I wanted to believe him. God, I wanted to. But that night, when everyone left and I was finally alone again, something else happened. I paused the episode to grab a drink. The buffering icon spun in the corner of the screen. Just the usual red circle, looping endlessly. Only this time, the circle stopped spinning. It warped, bent, and then the letters appeared inside it, one by one, as if being typed. Turn around. I stood there, frozen, bottle of water clutched in my hand, staring at the screen like it could explain itself. My reflection stared back at me in the black glass around the icon. For a second, I thought I saw another reflection too. A taller shape standing just behind mine. I didn't turn around. Not then. Instead, I shut the TV off and sat in silence, heart pounding so loud I could hear it in my ears. The thing about silence, though, is it doesn't last. Not when something wants to be heard. That night, lying in bed, I got another email. Same blank subject line, same scrambled sender address. This time, no words in the body, just a single image. It was the paused frame again. The man at the window. Only this time, he wasn't in my room. He was in my living room. And on the table beside him, clear as day, was the bottle of water I'd been holding in my hand just hours before. I never showed Dylan or Lexi that picture. I didn't need to, because I knew what they'd say. Dylan would laugh. Lexi would get that tight, worried look in her eyes. And me? I'd be the one who couldn't explain why the man in the photo was standing in my apartment before I ever left the couch. So I didn't tell them. Instead, I'll tell you. Because if you've seen it too, if your subtitles have ever whispered things they shouldn't, if your buffering icon has ever spelled out words, then maybe I'm not alone after all. And if I'm not alone, then maybe you're not safe either. It would have been easy to write everything off as coincidence if it had just stayed inside the screen. Glitched subtitles, creepy reflections, weird buffering messages. You can laugh those away. You can tell yourself it's a bad connection, corrupted files, or your imagination playing tricks. But the watcher didn't stay on the screen. He followed me out. The first time I realized it, I was at work. Just another mind-numbing morning, staring at spreadsheets under the sickly hum of fluorescent lights. I got up to grab coffee, and when I came back, there was a sticky note on my keyboard. Yellow. Ordinary. Except for what was written on it. Stop fast-forwarding. I froze. My eyes scanned the office, half expecting Dylan to jump out laughing. But Dylan didn't work with me. Nobody there even knew about the subtitles, about that line. When I picked up the note, my hands were trembling so badly I could barely hold it. I turned it over. Blank on the back. No signature. No clue who left it. That was the moment I knew this wasn't just about Netflix. The watcher wasn't content to haunt my screen. He was in the walls of my life now. That night, I told myself I'd stay calm. I'd test it. I'd put the show on again, just to prove it was all in my head. So I did. Lights off. Alone in the living room. The episode loaded like normal. Characters talked. Nothing strange. Then my phone buzzed. New message. No name. Just an unknown number. The text said, "We liked your reaction. Do it again." My stomach dropped. I hadn't reacted out loud, but I had reacted, jerked back, gasped, when the sticky note appeared at work. The watcher had seen it. I didn't reply, didn't block the number, just threw the phone face down on the couch. But even then, I swear I felt eyes on me, like the static buzz of someone else breathing in the same room. I tried to laugh it off. Dark humor is a shield, right? I even whispered, "Cool prank, Netflix. What's next? You gonna autoplay my funeral?" The silence that followed was worse than any reply. The messages didn't stop there. They escalated. Emails, texts, even printed letters slipped under the door at night. The language was always the same. Short, direct, watching. We see you. Stop skipping. Don't pause after 3 o'clock. That last one rattled me, because I had paused the episode once after 3 a.m. when I couldn't sleep. And right as I did, I swore I saw movement in the corner of the dark screen. Something standing just over my shoulder. I started avoiding Netflix altogether. Tried YouTube, TikTok, anything else. But it didn't matter. The watcher wasn't confined to one platform. A TikTok auto-played on my feed one night. Random account, 0 followers, no profile pic. Just a grainy, silent clip of my apartment hallway. My door. Because if he's watching me, and he's watching you, then maybe, just maybe, we can still find a way out. But I doubt it. There's a certain kind of silence that cuts deeper than any scream. It's the silence of someone looking you in the eye, hearing everything you're saying, and deciding you're crazy. That's the silence I kept running into. At first, I tried Dylan. He'd always been the guy chasing conspiracies, the one who believed in every shadow. If anyone would take me seriously, it should have been him. But when I showed him the texts, the sticky note, even the voicemail, he just smirked. Bro, come on. You're sleep deprived. You probably wrote that note yourself and forgot. And that voicemail could be a robocall glitch. I wanted to scream at him. Instead, I laughed along, pretended he'd won the argument, and stuffed the evidence back into my pocket. Because arguing with Dylan only made me feel more insane. Lexi was different. She didn't laugh. She listened. But her silence was worse. She'd purse her lips, tilt her head like she was studying me under glass, and then say something careful. Too careful. Hey, maybe you should take a break from screens. Get some sleep. That kind of sympathy feels like a knife. Because it isn't belief, it's pity. And pity is just another way of saying you've lost it. So I stopped telling them. I stopped telling anyone. I carried the weight alone. Every email, every message, every whisper in the dead of night became my secret burden. But carrying it alone changes you. I started jumping at small noises, the creak of the floorboards, the whir of the fridge. Shadows seemed longer. My own reflection felt like it was waiting for me to blink. At work, people noticed. Rough night, my manager asked, eyeing the dark circles under my eyes. You look like you've been in a fight. I wanted to tell her I was in a fight, just not one anyone could see. The truth is, paranoia is exhausting. It eats your relationships first. Dylan stopped hanging out with me. Lexi texted less, and even when she did, her words were short, careful, like she didn't want to get sucked into whatever mess I was drowning in. One night, I tried to break through. I sent her one of the emails, unedited. I waited, heart hammering, watching the typing bubbles appear on my screen. Finally, her reply came. This isn't funny. Don't send me stuff like that again. I stared at the message until the letters blurred. Funny, that's what she thought this was. A joke. That was when the isolation fully sank in. And yet, even in that loneliness, I wasn't truly alone. Not really, because he was there. I'd hear the floor creak at night, like someone pacing just outside my door. Sometimes the TV would flicker on by itself, silent, stuck on the Netflix home screen. The red N glowing in the dark, pulsing faintly, like a heartbeat. That's when I realized something horrible. I wasn't just being watched. I was being studied, prodded, like an experiment, and everyone around me was too blind, or too safe, to see it. I tried to tell myself it wasn't real, that I was imagining it, but then I'd catch tiny details that made denial impossible. A glass on the counter moved half an inch. A sticky note in my own handwriting where I swore I hadn't left one. Isolation does that to you. It twists every doubt into evidence, every silence into confirmation. I think that's exactly what the Watcher wanted. To peel me away from everyone else, strip me down until there was no one left but him and me. And it worked. Because by the time I realized he was inside my house, there was nobody left I could call. It happened on a night I should have been asleep. I'd promised myself I wouldn't touch Netflix again, that I wouldn't feed him, wouldn't give the watcher the satisfaction of knowing I was still watching. But insomnia is cruel, and fear has a way of turning into temptation. It was 3:28 a.m. when I caved. The apartment was silent except for the buzz of the fridge. I sat on the couch, phone face down, remote in my hand. My palms were sweaty, but I clicked the red in anyway. At first, everything looked normal. Rows of shows, auto-playing trailers. Then I scrolled past the continue watching section. That's when I saw it. A title I didn't recognize. No thumbnail, no description. Just a black rectangle with white text. The Watcher, Episode 0. It wasn't supposed to exist. The series started at Episode 1. I knew because Dylan and I had binged it from the beginning. But there it was, waiting for me, like it had been added just for tonight. Every part of me screamed not to click. But curiosity, no. Compulsion won. The screen flickered, then loaded. No intro, no music. Just static. Then the static cleared, and I froze. Because I was looking at myself. Not an actor. Not a dramatization. Me. Sitting on the couch in my own apartment, lit by the blue glow of the TV. My hoodie, my lamp, even the exact pile of takeout boxes on the table. For a second, I thought the TV had glitched into a live feed from a hidden camera. But then the version of me on screen moved differently. He rubbed his eyes when I didn't. He leaned back just a second before I did. Like he wasn't me. Like he was ahead of me. I whispered, "No, no, no, no." But I couldn't stop watching. Episode 0 played out like some warped mirror. Every detail was mine, but slightly wrong. The colors too muted, the shadows too sharp. And then came the moment that broke me. On screen, my phone buzzed. I picked it up. I frowned. Seconds later, my real phone buzzed too. I grabbed it, hands shaking. New text. Same unknown number. "You're doing great. Keep watching." I dropped the phone. The me on screen didn't. He just smiled faintly, like he'd been expecting the message. The episode went on, showing things I hadn't done yet. Things I hadn't lived yet. I watched myself get up, walk to the kitchen, pour a glass of water. My real throat went dry. And then it happened. On screen, I turned toward the window. The reflection of the glass caught me at an angle, and there was a man standing behind me. Pale, expressionless, watching. I whipped my head toward my actual window, empty, just the dark city outside. But when I looked back at the TV, the man was closer. Every instinct screamed at me to turn it off, but my hand wouldn't move. I was trapped, locked in some awful loop of watching myself being watched. Finally, the episode cut to black. White text appeared. End of episode 0. Next episode begins at 3:33 a.m. I glanced at the clock. 3:32. My heart slammed against my ribs. I didn't breathe. I just stared at the numbers ticking up on the microwave clock. When it hit 3:33, the TV flickered on again by itself. Episode 1. The same episode Dylan and I had watched weeks before. Only it wasn't the same. Characters mentioned names that hadn't been there before. My name, Lexi's name, even Dylan's. The world inside the show had shifted, twisted, reconfigured itself to include me. That's when I realized the truth. I wasn't just watching The Watcher. The Watcher was watching me. Episode 0 played out like some warped mirror. Every detail was mine, but slightly wrong. The colors too muted, the shadows too sharp. And then came the moment that broke me. On screen, my phone buzzed. I picked it up. I frowned. Seconds later, my real phone buzzed too. I grabbed it, hands shaking. New text. Same unknown number. "You're doing great. Keep watching." I dropped the phone. The me on screen didn't. He just smiled faintly, like he'd been expecting the message. The episode went on, showing things I hadn't done yet. Things I hadn't lived yet. I watched myself get up, walk to the kitchen, pour a glass of water. My real throat went dry. And then it happened. On screen, I turned toward the window. The reflection of the glass caught me at an angle, and there was a man standing behind me. Pale, expressionless, watching. I whipped my head toward my actual window, empty, just the dark city outside. But when I looked back at the TV, the man was closer. Every instinct screamed at me to turn it off, but my hand wouldn't move. I was trapped, locked in some awful loop of watching myself being watched. Finally, the episode cut to black. White text appeared, end of episode 0. Next episode begins at 3:33 a.m. I glanced at the clock. 3:32. My heart slammed against my ribs. I didn't breathe. I just stared at the numbers ticking up on the microwave clock. When it hit 3:33, the TV flickered on again by itself. Episode 1. The same episode Dylan and I had watched weeks before. Only it wasn't the same. Characters mentioned names that hadn't been there before. My name, Lexi's name, even Dylan's. The world inside the show had shifted, twisted, reconfigured itself to include me. That's when I realized the truth. I wasn't just watching the Watcher. The Watcher was watching me. I yanked the cord from the wall, ripping the TV into silence. I stood there in the dark, chest heaving, my own reflection trembling in the black glass of the dead screen. But even without the TV on, I could still hear him. A voice whispering in the silence, the same words over and over, crawling under my skin. Don't stop now. Don't stop now. Don't stop now. And that's the thing, I didn't stop. Because by then, I understood something I wish I hadn't. The Watcher doesn't just feed on fear. He feeds on attention. And if you've ever clicked a title you shouldn't have, if you've ever felt the itch to see what you weren't supposed to, then maybe you've fed him too. I'll tell you how he hunts. I'll tell you the rules, the traps, the way he pulls you in. But first you need to ask yourself, when the screen tells you something's forbidden, do you stop? Or do you keep watching? By the time I'd seen episode 0, by the time I felt my name stitched into the fabric of the show itself, I realized the Watcher wasn't random. He wasn't chaos. He followed rules. And once you start to notice the rules, you can't unsee them. The first rule is simple. The Watcher never appears uninvited. He doesn't force his way in. He waits. A late-night binge, a curious click, a glance at a recommended episode that doesn't belong. You open the door yourself, and once you do, he knows you're weak enough to keep opening it again. The second rule, everything comes in threes. 3 words in the first email, we see you. 3 sticky notes by my bed. 3 a.m., always 3 a.m. when the episodes begin. It's a ritual, not coincidence. And when I asked myself what happens at the third stage of the ritual, I realized I was already standing at it. The third rule is the most terrifying. He doesn't watch you at random. He scripts you. The Watcher isn't a parasite. He's a writer, a director. Every move you make, every reaction you give, he's recording, rewriting, reshaping into the story he wants. That's why episode 0 was ahead of me. It wasn't showing my life. It was dictating it. I tested it once. Stupidest mistake I ever made. At 3:33 one night, I watched as Screen Me walked to the kitchen and poured a glass of water. I refused. I sat frozen on the couch, determined not to play along. But then I heard it. The faint clink of ice in a glass. From the kitchen, when I finally forced myself to look, the glass was already there on the counter. Filled. Waiting. Exactly as the episode had shown. The fourth rule, the Watcher isolates you. He doesn't let anyone else see what you see. Show them the messages, they'll laugh. Play the episodes, they'll glitch, revert, vanish. To them, it's a blank screen. To you, it's a mirror. That's why no one believed me. Because he didn't want them to. And the last rule, the one that keeps me awake, the one that makes me feel like I'll never be free, is this. Once you're in the story, you don't get to leave. He doesn't kill you, not directly. That would be too simple, too merciful. No, he folds you deeper into the script. Your life becomes a season. Your choices, episodes. Until one day, you're not watching Netflix anymore. You are Netflix. A ghost in the autoplay queue, a face in the static. I think that's what happened to the others. You've heard of them. Urban legends, lost episodes, creepypastas about people who vanished after a night of binge watching. Everyone laughs, says it's fake. But what if those weren't stories? What if they were just older seasons? And what terrifies me most is this. If you're still listening, if you're still here with me, then the watcher already knows your name too. It's strange how quickly you stop trusting your own senses. I used to believe in reality. Firm, solid, dependable. Walls stayed where they were. Shadows behaved like shadows. The mirror showed me and nothing else. But once the watcher had written me into his script, the seams started to split. It began small. A fork I swore I'd left in the sink turned up clean in the drawer. My sneakers, muddy from the night before, appeared scrubbed spotless at the door. Harmless things. Almost funny, if you didn't think too hard. But then I noticed the glitches. One morning, I walked into the kitchen, and for a split second, I saw it, like the frame of a movie skipping. My counter flickered. The stack of dishes vanished, then reappeared, like the world was buffering. That's when I realized my life wasn't mine anymore. It was streaming, and streams glitch. The worst part was mirrors. I'd catch my reflection lagging, just by a fraction of a second. I'd raise my hand, and he'd follow, too slow, like a bad connection. Once, his lips moved when mine didn't. I couldn't hear what he said, but I could feel it. A command. A script note. I stopped looking in mirrors after that. But reflections are everywhere. Windows, screens, puddles on the street. No matter how hard you try, you can't escape your double. Lexi noticed something was wrong. I hadn't seen her in weeks, but she showed up one night, pounding on my door until I opened it. "You look like hell," she said, pushing past me. "And don't tell me you're fine. You're pale, you're twitching." I wanted to tell her everything, to finally make someone else carry a piece of this with me. But when I opened my mouth, the words that came out weren't mine. "They don't want you here." Flat. Cold. Lexi froze. "What did you just say?" I clamped my mouth shut, heart racing. I hadn't chosen those words. He had, and Lexi knew it. Her eyes darted to the TV, black and lifeless in the corner of the room. "You need help," she whispered. Then she left. I didn't stop her, because deep down, I knew she was safer away from me. After that, the fractures widened. Sometimes I'd wake up in places I didn't remember walking to, standing on the balcony at 4 a.m., staring at the building across the street, sitting at my desk with the laptop open to a blank Google Doc, cursor blinking like it was waiting for me to type his script. Worse still were the overlaps. One night, I glanced outside and saw me, standing under the streetlight. Same hoodie, same posture, just staring up at my window. I slammed the blinds shut. When I turned back, the other me was already inside the apartment. But he wasn't solid. He flickered, jittered, like bad reception. I lunged for the door, but when I whipped around, he was gone. That's when I understood I wasn't losing my mind. I was losing my autonomy. The watcher wasn't content with watching anymore. He wanted full control, to collapse the gap between script and reality until there was no difference. Until I wasn't living my life. I was performing it. And the audience was just him. Always him. Do you know what it feels like to live without certainty? To wake up and wonder if the glass of water on your counter is your choice or his. To question whether the words you're saying right now are yours. Or if they're being written on a screen somewhere, streamed to someone you'll never meet? That's collapse. It doesn't come with explosions or screams. It comes with the quiet dread that you are no longer the main character in your own story. And once you reach that point, there's no climbing back out. Because if the world can glitch once, it can glitch again. And if the reflection can move without you once, it can move again. And if the watcher can write one episode about you, what's stopping him from writing the finale? There's a moment when fear shifts into inevitability. You stop asking if it's real, if it can be stopped, if maybe, just maybe, you're imagining things. You just accept it. That's where I was the night the watcher finally stepped out of the screen. It started, as always, at 3 a.m. The TV flickered on by itself, even though I'd unplugged it. The Netflix logo pulsed red against the black, like a warning light in the dark. Then it loaded, not the home screen, not the endless rows of shows. Just one video file, waiting. Episode 10, the end. I didn't press play, didn't touch the remote. But the episode started anyway. At first, it was the usual setup. My apartment, perfectly mirrored, though cleaner, brighter. And there I was, sitting on the couch. The script me raised his head, looked directly at the camera, and smiled. I didn't. Then he spoke. You've been a good character, but it's time for us to meet properly. The lights in my apartment flickered, synced perfectly with the ones in the episode. My stomach dropped. I knew what was coming before it happened. He stood up, and so did I. Not because I wanted to, because I had to. My body wasn't mine anymore. My muscles twitched, jerked, moved in time with his. He walked toward the TV, and so did I. The screen shimmered, the way heat rises off asphalt. I tried to stop, tried to pull back, but my legs kept moving. And then, he stepped out. It didn't look like a CGI effect or some cheesy horror jump scare. It was seamless. 1 second he was in the screen, the next he was in my living room, standing inches from me. And he was me. Same face, same clothes, but wrong. His eyes were too dark, his smile too wide, like my features had been adjusted for maximum discomfort. Watching him was like looking at a bootleg version of yourself, recognizable, but corrupted. Finally, he whispered. His voice was mine, but distorted, like it had been run through static. No more middleman, no more scream. I tried to speak, to scream, but my jaw locked. He circled me slowly, studying me like I was a prop. His fingers brushed my shoulder, cold as ice. You gave yourself to me the moment you watched, he said. You pressed play, and play pressed back. My heart slammed in my chest. I wanted to deny it, to shout that I never chose this, but some part of me knew he was right. Every late night click, every morbid curiosity, those had been invitations. And the watcher never enters uninvited. He leaned closer, lips brushing my ear. It's time to decide. Do you want to keep being the watcher, or become the watched? For a moment, I thought he meant death. But then I realized, this wasn't about dying. It was about replacing. He wanted to trade places. The TV still glowed behind him, and on the screen, I saw myself sitting there, motionless, eyes wide in terror. A perfect loop. He was here, and I was already there. The glitch was complete. I don't know where the strength came from, but I lunged, shoved him backward. He staggered, grinned, then let himself fall into the screen like it was a pool of water. And just like that, he was gone. The TV flickered, the logo pulsed, and I was left gasping, shaking, in the dark. But here's the thing, the episode didn't end. The screen showed me, still standing there, panting. But the me on screen smiled. Slowly, patiently. And then he whispered, "See you soon." The power in my building blew out. Blackness swallowed everything. When it returned, seconds, minutes, I don't know, the TV was dead. Unplugged. But the smile lingered in my mind, burned into the backs of my eyelids. That was the climax. The face-to-face. But it wasn't a victory. Because I don't know if I shoved him back into the screen, or if I shoved myself in. And if you're watching this, if you've heard my story, then maybe you're already in the next episode. I wish I could say the story ended there. That pushing him back into the screen broke the curse. That life slowly stitched itself together. That I became normal again. But that's not how the Watcher works. He doesn't leave. He lingers. At first, I tried to pretend. I went back to work, smiled at coworkers, scrolled through social media. I forced myself to believe that if I ignored it hard enough, reality would stop flickering. But the rules were still there. The threes. The 3 a.m. pull. The way mirrors seemed too eager to hold my reflection. It was quieter now, yes. But silence isn't safety. It's the pause between episodes. Sometimes I catch myself speaking in words I didn't mean to say. Short, clipped lines, like script notes bleeding through. Sometimes people laugh, call it zoning out. But I see the confusion in their eyes too. Like they heard something off, something that didn't belong to me. Worse are the gaps. Minutes, hours that vanish, replaced by the sense that I've just finished a scene I can't remember acting in. The continuity errors of a life no longer mine. And every night, without fail, Netflix recommends The Watcher. Always at the top of the list. I've hidden it, reported it, deleted my account. But no matter what device, no matter whose login, I see it. My show, my season. People online whisper about it. Posts on Reddit. Why does Netflix recommend me a show that doesn't exist? Threads about episode 0. Screenshots that vanish when you refresh. Most dismiss it as a hoax. But some sound like me. Like they're already trapped. That's the new normal. Living with the knowledge that I'm not the only one. That The Watcher is spreading, writing more scripts, drafting more finales. I've thought about warning people directly. About posting everything, screenshots, recordings. But then I remember Rule 4. No one else can see it unless he wants them to. Sharing only makes me look insane. And maybe that's part of the plan. So instead, I'm telling you this way. Not as proof, not as evidence, but as a story. Because stories are safer. People believe them, share them, laugh nervously at them. And in the act of telling, maybe, just maybe, I can pass on the curse. Maybe you've already felt it. The prickling on your neck. The sense that your reflection is watching you instead of the other way around. The recommendation waiting in your queue. If you haven't, don't worry. You will. Because I've learned the final truth, the one rule I didn't want to admit. The Watcher never ends. He renews. And the next season might be yours. If you're still here, listening, watching, then it's already too late. That's how it works. That's how he works. The Watcher doesn't need you to believe. He just needs your attention. A second of eye contact. A click. A play button pressed because curiosity outweighed caution. And that's what you just gave him. Maybe tonight it'll be nothing. Just a flicker in the corner of your vision. A reflection lagging behind. Maybe you'll laugh it off. Tell yourself it's stress, bad sleep. A story you shouldn't have taken so seriously. But tomorrow, or the next night, or the one after that, you'll know. You'll open your screen and find him waiting. Not as a character, not as a rumor, not even as me, but as the audience you never realized was watching. And when you feel that pull at 3 a.m., when your device glows in the dark even though you swore you shut it off, remember this. You weren't the one pressing play. You were the one being played. So consider this your last warning. The Watcher isn't just a show. He's watching now.